Morning, everyone. It's such a delight to be back here again today. I hope everyone got a good night's rest after that spectacular dinner experience we had last night. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. So we're going to mix things up a little bit here with this session. One of the premises of this entire event was we have a lot of success stories to celebrate. This is not a topic where we're talking about getting started from zero, getting started from scratch. There has been so much work done over the last 10, 15 years, taking this approach of a multi-capitals, multi-sectoral approach and stakeholder-driven approach to understanding not just hidden costs, but also unrealized or unrecognized benefits that has really driven tangible action on the ground and in the private sector, in policy, in work with farmers, in work with consumers. So what we wanted to do this morning is to hear from some of the representatives who are working on initiatives that have some really, I think, important lessons that we can all glean from, that apply not just to their sectors or regions where they're working, but really have some transferable insights that we might all benefit from across our work. So to do this, we're going to have colleagues who we identified as having some similar themes in their work or connective tissue between their work, speaking in dialogue to one another. So we're going to bring up three sets of speakers they will spend a couple of minutes each talking about their work, introducing what they do, and then allow them to ask questions of each other in a way that we hope will elicit the kind of insights that you all will find useful and can transfer to the work that you're doing. So with that said, I think I will go ahead and welcome our first set of speakers to the stage. We have three sets of speakers, so 6 people altogether. And at the end of their the duos, those 3 sets of conversations, we'll invite all 6 back to the stage and have time for you all to ask any questions. So while you're listening, be thinking about what questions you may have from them, what were the enabling conditions that led to their project being successful, or maybe some of the challenges that they encountered and how they solved them. So just be thinking about those ideas and have your questions ready for the panel at the end. So I would like to welcome first to the stage Saskia Sanders and Phumsith Mahasuweerachai. Did I get that right? Close? Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you. So welcome to the stage. And while they're joining, I'll just give a brief introduction on their affiliations. So Saskia is Senior Policy Advisor for Sustainable Food Systems at the Federal Office for Agriculture in Switzerland. She co-led the development of the Swiss country case study on the hidden costs of the Swiss agri-food systems for the 2024 FAO State of Food and Agriculture report that we've been hearing about in the last day or so. In addition, Saskia is a member of the Swiss negotiating delegation to the UNFCCC climate negotiations. Phumsith, or Phum, is a behavioral economist in the economics department at Kaen University in Thailand. Phum was part of the team leading the UN Environment Programme's application of its TCA framework known as TEEB Agri-Food, which we heard quite a bit about yesterday, to study the costs and benefits of converting a segment of Thailand rice farmers to organic rice production and the implications of various scenarios for doing that. So with that, I will turn it over to Saskia and Phum.
Thank you, Jen, for the introduction. So we start our conversation. And Phum, I know you have a very interesting project on TCA. So why don't you maybe start by introducing the project and tell us also a little bit about the history and how it came about.
Yeah, thank you, Saskia, for your question. And also thank you for TCA to inviting us to join this very important network about the food sustainability food system. So back to the Saskia work questions about my work. Actually, this of my work actually under the TIP agrifood projects of the UNEP. So actually, Thailand is one of the countries that, as far as I know, have been chosen as one of the pilot country to implement the TIP projects. So we start the projects around 2019 officially, and working on that until the project ended in 2023. So for this project, when we start to get the questions and some guidance from the steering committee, there are two crops that the steering committee, which the combination of the government's unit of Thailand, the two choice of crops that they provide to us to work on. So we need to choose one, rice and durian. Did you know durian before? So my team ended up choosing doing the TIP project on rice. Why? First, around 50% of agricultural area of Thailand is the rice field. And more than 50% of the agricultural of the farmer household in Thailand is the rice farmer. So even in terms of the what we call money, in terms of counting as how much the value in the market between rice and durian is different. The durian is right now it's the number one, the highest value of the crop in Thailand in terms of export value. But in terms of impact to the area and the people, rice is always number one. So that's why we propose that we're going to working on rice sector in Thailand. Yeah, that is kind of like the story of this project. Yeah, and we create we set up the scenario to see what's going to happen if the rice area in Thailand changes to sustainable rice practice and organic rice practice compared to the conventional rice practice that most of the farmers currently practice at that time. Yeah, that's the main question of the projects. Yeah. Well, so my turn. So actually the same question that I would like to ask to Saskia about to please tell about the main purpose and a little bit background of the history of the project you work on.
Well, thank you, Phum, for the nice introduction of your project. Yes, I would like to talk a little bit about the Swiss case study we did as part of the process together with FAO for preparing the SOFA 24 report. It was a study that was based on the results of the SOFA 23 report, and we then looked into these results and checked whether we wanted or needed to make any adjustments for the Swiss context. So whether we could make any refinements or add elements to that so that it becomes more relevant for Switzerland. And the main aim of this study was really to create transparency regarding the hidden costs that are related to the Swiss agri-food system. In all three dimensions of sustainability, that was an important motivation to really look at the economic, the social, also including health costs and the environmental costs. And we also wanted to identify the most pressing challenges, but also opportunities in terms of hidden costs and provide recommendations on possible entry points for a sustainable transformation of the food system. Now, before I go into how this came about, I always think it's important to mention that food systems have many benefits. They produce our food that we all need, and there are also other benefits such as landscape provisions. But unfortunately, it also comes at a cost. So with this study, we specifically really looked at the costs that are the hidden costs that are related to the food system, but we don't want to neglect that there are also many important benefits. So now let me explain a little bit about the history. In 2022, the Swiss Federal Council, which is our executive branch, published a report on the future orientation of agricultural policy. And this report was a demand by the parliament to have a basis for a more strategical discussion on how to develop agricultural policy in the longer term. And the report came up with a vision for 2050, which is food security through sustainability from consumption to production. So the scope really went beyond agriculture, going more in a direction of a food system policy. And this report also proposed specifically to work on true cost and to create transparency regarding the hidden costs. So it really gave us a very solid basis to work on that topic. And as I said, the motivation was to create transparency, to identify challenges and entry points, but it was never specifically the intention to work towards policies that directly influence prices. So that's probably also always an important topic that comes up when we talk about true cost. And yeah, for us, as also Andrea mentioned yesterday when he talked about the SOFA report, for us it was really that the SOFA reports on true cost came at the right time. We were just ready to start with this, to work on this topic, and we were very glad we had the opportunity to collaborate with FAO on this. It was also important for us to do that in an internationally coordinated manner, because the Swiss food system is not isolated. It's of course part of a global economy in the end. So, and then another element maybe for the context is that currently in Switzerland, the administration is developing a new draft agriculture policy that will be debated in Parliament in 2027. So this is still an ongoing process. So now that we have both now introduced our projects, I think it would be really interesting to hear what are the main findings that from your study.
Yes, Saskia, thank you. Not quite sure whether you can show some slides. It's just only one slide. Actually, for the main findings from the project we work on the rice in Thailand. So we set up scenario and then we try to measure the benefit and cost, private and public, of changing the rice practice in Thailand. That's on each scenario. So we focus on both private benefit, in this case for the farmer. If the change happens, what's going to happen to the farmers? And if the change happens, what's going to happen in terms of benefit and cost for the publics? For the farmers, we try to predict, no, not just a farmer, for the public too, we try to predict to 2050 what's going to happen for the farmer if they change from the conventional rice practice that use a lot of chemical fertilizers, burning the live fields after harvesting, what's going to happen to their yields and costs in the long run. And what we found, especially for the sustainability rice practice, we found that go greeners is also better for the farmer. The yields improve, especially for the premium rice, the Jasmine rice of Thailand. For the 20, 30 years, the yield going to improve by almost 60%. And with the same price, they can sell in the market. Doesn't mean they can make more money. The cost will reduce by around 16 to 20%. From what? Reducing using chemical fertilizers and also reducing the cost of pesticides, but still have the good yield. Why this happen? Because we also measures the biodiversity improvement in the rice field. In this case, we measure to bad and good insects and microbial in the soil. So when farmer practice this kind of sustainable rice practice, the biodiversity also improve. What is called the food chain of the insects control themselves. The microbial in the soil improve. So that means soil structures, soil nutrients can be benefit. The yields can still improve. That turn toward profit of the farmer. That the main private incentive that we can use to incentivize farmer to continue and adopt the sustainable farming. And then we also found that changing to sustainable rice practice can also create tremendous public benefits. Sometimes for some measure, I call it as a reduction of loss, not the benefit, because we already lost a lot of things. How can we reduce that loss? For example, the health cost that caused by air pollution, because in Thailand, similar to India, farmers burn a lot of rice field after harvesting. That create what we call the particle matter 2.5, the PM 2.5, that can have the long-run impact on health of the human. If we can expand and help the farmer to stop burning the rice field, we can reduce the health costs that's gonna happen for the public. Also, our study also show like in the long run, greenhouse gas emission can be reduced from rice cultivation too, if farmers practice this kind of sustainability rights. And it's a little bit surprised our team because when we saw the result, because many people said like, if we go greener in agriculture, we're gonna have the problem with food security because we're gonna have the high price of food. We're gonna have a lot of uncertainty of the yield. But in the Thailand context, we don't find this kind of a big trade-off. So that means we can find a good synergy point for the farmer and the public from this study. And this, we need to show to the public and also the government how to change our at least rice system in Thailand. Yeah, that the overall of the the overview of the finding we have found in this study. Yeah. And actually the same questions, what you found in your study and how this can be helped to show and convince the stakeholders to apply the TCA.
Well, quite impressive what you found in this study. And so now let me come to the findings of our Swiss case study. Well, first of all, we found that the SOFA 23 provided a good basis to start exploring the hidden costs in Switzerland. Nevertheless, we also wanted to include some additional aspects that were not included in SOFA 23, and I think often it was just due to maybe lack of data on a global level, but we did well have some data to fill these gaps for Switzerland specifically. And now I'm going to give you just some of the main numbers. We found generally hidden costs accounted, total hidden costs were around $39 billion for the entire Swiss food system. And about half, so roughly half of these costs are related to unhealthy diets. So these are productivity losses that result from non-communicable diseases that are caused by unhealthy diets. So that was really the largest cost category. Then the second most important was biodiversity. It's roughly a quarter. And then the remaining quarter is mainly due to greenhouse gas emissions and nitrogen emissions, and then a smaller share for all the other indicators such as land use change, soil health, antimicrobial resistance, and animal welfare. And an important aspect for us was also to consider imports. The SOFA 23 calculations, they have system boundaries that are territorial for country specific. For Switzerland and for the discourse in Switzerland, we thought it was really important to also look at the hidden costs that are related to imports. Because in Switzerland, we import about half of the food. So we really thought that wouldn't give us the full picture if we wouldn't also include the hidden costs related to imports. And we came up with the best possible estimate. It's for sure not a perfect number, but we estimated the hidden costs to approximately $8 billion in addition to the 39 billion that we already had for the Swiss food system. And it was also important not only to have the full picture, but when it comes to acting on reducing the hidden costs, we also want to avoid a situation where reducing the hidden costs within Switzerland would lead to a shift of these costs abroad. So that was another thought about including these imports. And then when it comes to identifying entry points, of course, the largest cost categories that I mentioned are very important, but it's not the only thing to consider. I think it's important to also look beyond these costs and to really look at what are the drivers for the cost categories and what are the interlinkages between the drivers and the cost categories. And also really looking at the entire food system to not jump to conclusions too quickly. So in some cases, we find that there are drivers for cost categories or the cost categories themselves that are very closely linked. So let me give you one example. The healthy diets, which is or the unhealthy diets, drive the main cost category. And if we could reduce those, we would at the same time reduce greenhouse gas emissions and nitrogen emissions because the drivers are partly the same. So it would actually, it's a possibility to act on multiple cost categories at the same time. And then the study also identified other important entry points, such as avoiding food loss and waste, because of course, if something is not produced, then the related emissions are also not caused. And we should also look at the smaller cost categories to make sure that these don't become big in the future. As we know, for example, water scarcity is currently not a big problem in Switzerland, but we know with climate change that could possibly change.
So thank you. Actually, we talked that we actually have another issue about like how can we using the finding to scale up and implement this kind of finding to the real world, but just leave it for, because we don't have time right now.
It will be up to you to ask that question.
Right, yeah.
Goes by fast, huh? I forgot to mention, as I called them up, that the theme of their collaboration and discussion was policy implementation. And in each case there, obviously Saskia working directly in the government, but with Phum and the team working on the TEEB agri-food project, having the collaboration and connection with the government along the way. And hopefully we can get into that in the Q&A a little bit. All right, so pardon me, looks like I don't have the right note page. Sorry. Okay, so now on to our next set of speakers. The theme for this talk between our next two speakers is farmer engagement. And so I would like to call up to the stage Brooke Gentile and Janet Morrow. Brooke is the executive director of the Organic Association of Kentucky with 25 years of experience in sustainable agriculture and stakeholder-driven project development across the United States. Brooke coordinates efforts to adapt and trial the Global Farm Metric sustainability assessment tool with Kentucky farmers. Janet is the executive director of Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania, a national organization in Tanzania with the vision to reduce social and environmental problems and to provide sustainable food in ways that are friendly for the environment and the fast-growing global population. Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania engages farmers and communities at the grassroots, working together to grow healthy, nutritious food while safeguarding the environment and implementing climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. So Janet and Brooke, welcome, and off you go. Oh, you need to click.
Yeah, some slides. Good morning. I'm so grateful to be here with you all and in conversation with you, Janet. We are going to ask each other just a couple questions to share stories, and we both have slides for you, beautiful slides from farmers we've worked with in the field. So do you want to start by just introducing Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania and your work there, just overview, and then we'll get into obstacles?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Janet Mara, as I've been introduced, and I'm very happy to be with you this morning, Brooke, to share experiences, especially with farmers. Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania is a non-governmental organization. We are based in the Morogoro area of Tanzania, and we started work about 15 years ago, and we have, we'll talk a bit about that and the work we do, Brooke, and also share with the audience this morning. I'm not an expert on true cost accounting, but I have some experience over the last 15 years, especially working in agroecology and food systems transformation, and also what I have observed as the contributions to the ecosystem, contributions to the transformation of plots and landscapes in the areas where we work. And yes, so briefly about that. As I said, we are a non-governmental organization. I'm not sure where I have to oh, okay. I will sit back again because now it's working. Yes, Sustainable Agriculture Tanzania, we're based in the eastern part of Africa, for those that don't know. And we are a country, we have the Indian Ocean, we border Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Congo, Zambia, Mozambique, Malawi. So we have very many countries that we are bordering. And this also has historical significance. Based on the struggle for independence, but also the support we provided our neighboring countries during the struggles. And this goes further to the current moment where we now are working on national agroecology strategies across the African continent. And we, Tanzania, are still a lighthouse and helping and sharing with other countries around the continent on strategies for agroecology. As you know, Tanzania, we have the National Ecological Organic Agriculture Strategy, and we are very happy to be part of the National Implementation Task Force that enables the implementation of this strategy. I will skip that. We'll skip this. Yes, I wanted to share that, as I said, I'm not an expert on true cost accounting, but this is our center. I hope you can see there are 3 pictures here. The first picture, sorry, I'm not sure if I point from here. Yes. Oh, I thought it was pointing. I had seen the red dot Oh, sorry. Let me try to. No, I didn't intend to go forward. I wanted to share the first, the first picture on that side. We see this is 13 years ago. 13 years ago, and that's the third Farmer Training Center. Sorry, bro. Yes, so that is 13 years ago at the Farmer Training Center, which is the first center for agroecology in Tanzania, and this is where the headquarters of SAT are. So 13 years ago, on this area, it's one of those areas where people would say you cannot do anything on such a land. It was very degraded because the type of human practices that took place on the area had destroyed the area completely. And so even when we were choosing to get this area as the headquarters of SAT and to put up the first agroecology center in Tanzania, people said, you are really crazy. You cannot do anything here. You don't have water. The land is degraded. The soil is poor. What can you make out of it? And so as you see our buildings and the area around, that's how it was. The picture above, this is about 7 years ago. And as you can see, there was not so much taking place there yet, but you see with the effort we put in place with working on the land, with adding compost, but making swales, channeling the water and retaining most of the water when it rains, we saw the big impact. This is the photo with the red roofs and the more green. This is most recent at the area 13 years later. And we see, if I stand now on the same spot where I took this picture years ago, you cannot see any building anymore because the area is covered by trees. And also the ecosystem, the environment around has changed completely. So I say, well, I'm not an expert with true cost accounting, but when I see this and I see the change that has happened in this area, there is something, and although it's not documented, but at least the pictures can speak for themselves. And now the farmers who come to this area to learn, to share, and exchange on different aspects, on how we build the land, how we put back to the soil, they get to really experience and get hands-on experiences which they can bring to their homes. At the center, every year we receive not less than 2,000 of champion farmers who come from different parts of the country to get to share and exchange and go back as champions to work with their fellow farmers in their areas and share the good news, the good information, and the good practices about agroecology. This is one component about SAT that I wanted to share today with Brooke, but also to share with you all. And then we can have further exchange. But as we continue the talk, please remember this picture and this transformation on the costs and also the benefits on what the food system, on what the human practices, the production of food can do on the area. I haven't talked about the food production, what we produce, the animals we keep, and all that. But for today, I wanted to share this. Thank you. Yes, and so Brooke, maybe you can also share about your work and what you're doing in Kentucky with the farmers there. Thank you.
All right. My name is Brooke Gentile. I'm the executive director with the Organic Association of Kentucky, and I started working with the organization in 2017. It's a farmer-founded, farmer-led nonprofit. Kentucky similarly is bordered by 7 different states as well, so very landlocked in that sense, but we are water rich, lots of waterways. The mission of the organization is to advance organic agriculture in the state, both in terms of certified organic operations and market opportunities, research, et cetera, collaborate on research, but also in terms of just advancing awareness of the practices and the multiple benefits of practices. 10 minutes we have left. Okay. So we accomplished that through really this grassroots farmer-directed initiative that spans farmer education, technical assistance, on-farm technical assistance around developing management plans, assistance towards navigating the certification process if they wish to become certified organic, and dispelling all the myths that lie there. And also we help to develop durable regional markets. In Kentucky, a lot of farmers that are getting a premium for their certified organic product or organically grown with the practices, they're selling direct to consumer. So we do help expand those and make those more durable, but we're also helping to develop more wholesale access in the regional marketplace as well. Because we know that farmers will adopt these practices if they see the benefit in the marketplace. That's an important part of the work we're doing. So yeah, we're sharing some pictures from the field. We have a lot of technical assistant staff that go out and work with farmers one-on-one. We do anything from develop cover cropping plans, fertility management plans, do soil sampling, water sampling, grazing management, and really develop the relationships with farmers. As an organization, we have 450 members across the state, but our programs reach 3,000 people annually. So in Kentucky, there are just 200 certified organic operations. So everyone should know we are not organic specific. It's really about the practices, the agroecological approach, and the multiple benefits that these practices have in terms of building resilience on the farm. We're hearing from farmers in Kentucky. Well, just last week, Kentucky as the state received 3 months worth of rainfall in 3 days. Less than 3 days. Our capital was completely underwater. We've had multiple states of emergency due to weather-related events, anything from tornadoes to flooding to drought all in 1 year. And farmers are demanding, requesting of us and other organizations, how do we build on-farm resilience to withstand this and that we can maintain some sense of a business and productivity here. So one of the obstacles are many, and one of the projects that I want to share with you today is really something that our farmers have been asking for is how do we as farmers become better farmers? How do we track our progress over time? How do we see the multiple benefits of this entire farming ecosystem in one place? And how do we tell that story in the marketplace and to our peers so that more people are farming like this? And how do we make the case for more research to support this? So we're really grateful for a deep collaboration with the Sustainable Food Trust and the incredible work that they've done to develop the global farm metric framework and the on-farm tool that they're using with farms. We have had the great opportunity to work alongside them since 2022 to adapt this tool to be used in Kentucky. And it has been a joyous and really fun and deep learning kind of journey with their team and with our farmers. So I'll share more about that in the brief time we have left. But I invite more questions later, and I have a copy of the tool here that I'll share with anyone who's interested during the break. Yeah, we have 5 minutes. So Janet, would you like to share a little bit more about some program specifics and maybe highlight some of the obstacles and the successes of farmer-led work that you're doing?
Yes, thank you very much, Brooke. Okay, maybe a few of the obstacles. So first, when it comes, as I said, I'm not an expert with true cost accounting, and I think for the case of Tanzania, we don't really have organizations or universities or entities that are really working on these tools and this system. So maybe it's an obstacle, but also an opportunity for collaborations in this field. So the next time we are also speaking with data and information, which oftentimes comes up Because you hear, do you carry out assessments? And I'll say, no, we didn't do any assessments. Another thing which I've had, you've mentioned to do organic certification. So for us in Tanzania, there is also, we do organic certification as well. We have both third-party certification, which is very expensive, and so not really accessible for the majority, and especially now with the new European Union regulations, it's a bit challenging. It's a bit challenging with getting third-party organic certification. But we do a lot of participatory guarantee system. I'm not sure if you do that in Kentucky, but we do a lot of participatory guarantee system. And this enables, it's a form of peer-to-peer guarantee at farm level, at community level by farmers. And it works very well. It works very well for the last almost 15 years when we started doing participatory guarantee systems in Tanzania. And generally on the actual practices, from previous speakers, I had, for example, the issues of slash and burn reduction, the issues of the quality of water improving. You'll see for the area we work on, the Uluguru Mountains, there we have observed through the satellite images that we see from Google that the landscape has changed. We see with more vegetation coming up on the mountains, and also the quality of water improving, that the turbidity of water is not so big when it rains, because farmers have put in bench terraces, which help to reduce erosion. And so water quality improves significantly. And the Uluguru Mountains for Tanzania, they're an important water source. They bring water to the Indian Ocean, but since there is no ocean in Morogoro, the people in Dar es Salaam depend on water from Morogoro, from the Uluguru Mountains. That's why doing farming that is friendlier for the environment and really planting trees and protecting the water sources is a necessity. It's something that needs to be done, and providing these benefits for the environment. And sorry, I talk a bit too much. I hope I have not finished all the 5 minutes. Thank you. Yes. So Brooke, apart from third-party organic certification in Kentucky, do you have other forms of organic guarantee that farmers are using maybe?
Yeah. So I'll show a few more slides here. In 2023, we started our trial using the Global Farm Metric Farm Sustainability Assessment Tool. And we trialed it with 26 farms that year. And I'll just share, it does collect 1,200 data points per farm, assessing what's happening on the farm during the year. And there are the 12 categories. So we're looking at lots of metrics within climate, community, nature, soil and water, governance, resources, inputs, farmers and workers, crops and pasture, livestock, products, and economics. It's a lot of data. One of the obstacles we had in this is getting farmers to say, okay, yeah, I really want to open this like 13-tab Excel spreadsheet and fill it out. So it was really important for us to be able to offer them financial compensation for the 4 to 6 hours that it takes for them to fill this out if they have all the records, which a lot do. And then it was also really important for us to provide the in-person technical assistance or virtual technical assistance to help them fill this out. Google Sheets are amazing. We have incredible pivot tables, and we are really excited to get into all the data crunching. But it's not without its obstacles and challenges there with farmers. But the way that it's designed is very reinforcing, positive. It shows positive reinforcement, because as they enter their data, it shows on a dashboard where their results are, how they're performing compared to their Kentucky peers, national peers, et cetera. And then also as they add multiple years of data, they see the trends over time, which is wonderful for a farmer to see that all in one place. In 2024, we then trialed this with 48 farms, and we were the recipient of a USDA Climate Smart Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities grant. I learned actually 2 days ago while I was here that it was terminated because of administration new priorities. So the threat is real to this work. We'll find a way to continue this. We do have 78 farms who want to do it this year, and most of them have said, we'll go ahead and do it without payment, I guess. So we're navigating that in real time right now. But I do want to share that as part of the technical technical assistance that we're doing. We're doing water testing, dissolved oxygen water sampling on farm. We're doing lots of soil sampling and tissue sampling with farms. And it's one of the most valuable things that farmers get out of this process, because we can really dial in fertility management plans by field that we're seeing. And we're making like 5-year management plans for them. And it's like the best service for farmers. And so I guess the point that I want to share here is that we're talking about really big transformational systems change, and the farmer has to be part of that equation. I know you all know that. Farmers, they're all types of folks doing production across all types of commodities in all types of soil and systems, but they need a seat at the table no matter what we're doing, whether it's market development, whether it's farm assessment, whether it's TCA, whether it's policy work. And farmers are busy, and not all of them have the ability to be in all these places. So whatever solutions we're looking to build, we have to make sure that all of those farmers are represented, and even the farmers that aren't yet part of the conversation through organizations. So that's my number one. We've had so much excitement and positive impacts through these programs, and farmers are ready and asking for it. And so my request to you all here today is just make sure that you're engaging farmer voices through your partnerships, through your relationships with actual farmers, and like just know that it takes time, and it takes time at like the speed, like you have to build trust at a slower pace with farmers. And so we've been doing this work since, 15 years at this point with farmers, and they were ready for it, but it's because we had that long-term relationship with them. There's so much more to share, but I know we're way over time, so.
Oh. Sorry, I thought I saw two
we have 2 more minutes. We've been granted a little bit more time. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, so I noticed that. And so, I wanted to thank you, Brooke, for sharing. I wanted to share also, you see, in several countries, and in particular in Tanzania, we have some of these subsidy programs. And now I think with some of the funding cuts that some of our governments receive, I'm not sure to what extent that will continue. But you see, the type of farming that is being promoted by the majority of the African governments, with the aim that, yes, increase yield at any cost, that is, it's not sustainable. And the cost of that, not just in the production of food, but in the actual cost and the hidden cost behind intensive ways of farming that are being advocated for and promoted for, pose a big risk, not just on the farmers or on the farms, but the bigger risk is on the future generations and their possibility to be able to have food or to grow food. So I don't know, with the case of Kentucky, does the government there also provide and enhance production of food that does not really care about anything else but just increase yield at any cost?
I would say yes, and it's variable state to state, but the dominant form of agriculture is certainly conventional production. Certified organic land management is on less than 1% of the acres in the U.S., and so it's definitely the minority, but also the market share has been growing pretty strong and steady for a long time, and is projected to continue so. So there's an opportunity there, an economic development opportunity for small farms and mid and large scale farms that want to enter into that marketplace. One of the opportunities that we've seen, honestly, and this is coming both from collaborators in the research field, but also from farmers, is making the case for the human health impacts that you were mentioning and that other speakers have mentioned. How do we tie in the public health and human nutrition piece to the TCA frameworks? Because we know that there are a lot of positive benefits there, but can we tie it to that actual farm? And one of the great collaborations in Kentucky that we've seen, our partners at University of Kentucky did a research study with consumers that were eating certified organic CSA, and they found that after one season of eating certified organic vegetables for 22 weeks, their diet-related medical and pharmaceutical expenses dropped by $1,600. And so because of that, we've been able to develop a partnership with employers that offer like a voucher towards CSA share as an employee health benefit. And so more work that can look at those public health benefits at a large scale that we can wrap into this work will be very convincing and help farmers make the case for these transitioning these practices and developing new markets, which will keep them in using those practices. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brooke. I think our time is up, and maybe we'll leave you with a question, food for thought. How do we make the transition to a more equitable, fair, free, sustainable food system for a better life for people, animals, and the environment? So I think this is a question we all can take with us as we continue our work. But we keep asking ourselves and see how we can contribute to a more equitable, fair, and sustainable food system. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to both of you and for all of the work that you're doing in somewhat challenging circumstances. And the point that you were ending on about public health and hearing the echoes of what Phum presented about the tea bagger food study and the findings about the enormous community benefits from the farming transition. I love that we're elevating that in this discussion and focusing on all of the different capitals that we should be assessing. All right, now we're going to switch gears to a different topic, which is making the investment case for holistic approaches and assessments. So I'm going to now welcome to the stage, and I'm sorry again, I'm struggling with my notes. So I want to welcome to the stage Christina Hastings and Volkert Engelsman. Volkert was founder and former CEO of EOSTA and is now chairing the Robin Food Coalition, a business network uniting for One Health, social inclusion, and regenerative agriculture. Christina Newsom Hastings is head of sustainability, managing director at Nuveen Natural Capital, leading the strategy and implementation of sustainability across Nuveen Natural Capital's global farmland, timberland, and restoration platform. And Christina brings over 25 years experience in sustainability, leadership, and strategy. So Volkert and Christina, welcome to the stage. I look forward to your discussion.
Ladies first.
Fantastic. Yep. I'll dive straight in with a little bit about Nuveen Natural Capital, a bit about what I do, but I'll litter it with lots of examples before passing it over to Volkert for his examples as well. So Nuveen Natural Capital, we are half asset manager, half farmer, forester, restorer. An unusual combination. So what does that mean? We've got 30 years of experience. It means that most of us are actually on the ground, water specialists, agronomists, soil scientists, and so on. We're long-term stewards of land that we buy on behalf of retirement trusts and pension funds, institutional capital across 11 different countries, about 60, 70 different crops and forest types, and about 3 million acres. So it's a fairly big portfolio. I look after sustainability, and I'll share with you some of our principles for this, which will actually ties really nicely into the TCA type approach. First principle is holistic. We have a long-term stewardship perspective in mind, holistic across nature, climate, and people. So of course, soil health is fundamental, water efficiencies and so on, climate, our emissions foremost, and people, the social communities is paramount. It's our social license to operate. It's not just that holistic from a a scope, it's also on a temporal basis. So today, yes, we have to deliver returns to our investors, but it's actually for future, for the resilience of our land, because that's the only way we can preserve value and conserve value. So it is a long-term perspective. And actually our tagline is invest like the future is watching. So that judgment, that future generation judgment on us today is always on our forefront. Second, so holistic, number one principle. Number two is pragmatic. Because we operate across so many countries, we're pragmatic, not dogmatic, which is very important, I think, because that gives the license to the individual farmers who we work for. So sometimes we farm ourselves, sometimes we work with tenant farmers, to be making the right judgments on the ground, depending on climatic conditions, depending on soil types, and depending on the local environment. But we are always, and we're always, third principle, nudge, don't judge. So I think that nudge is essential around providing incentives where possible, providing recognition tailored again to the local realities. So if there are three principles, I'll just give you some examples. What does it mean? What does all this mean? Well, it means that our measurement framework, what is good long-term steward and farming practices, what's good forestry practices, it's beyond financial statements. So we've got financial statements, and then we've got beyond financial statements, which for us means natural capital accounting, which is looking at the ecosystem services and the social impact of that from the stewardship. And that means measuring, tracking positive and negative externalities. To give you some examples, we have shelter belts in Romania. We have restorations in California, of Oakland Restoration, California, which on a surface might be actually taking land out of production. So on a financial statement, we have 10,000 trees going in on Romania, the Black Sea, has, wind controllers, the wind is eroding the topsoil. We're planting 10,000 trees. It's taking land out of production. On a financial statement, that would be considered an OPEX and a CAPEX, right? An expense. On a natural capital account, it's considered a preservation of value. It preserves the erosion from not taking place, and it preserves the soil. So it preserves value. But quantifying that and showing that much more visually to investors and to our communities is extremely important. The same in California, where we're restoring some oaklands. We're actually taking some vineyards out of production as a result. But restoring the oaklands, why? Because it's a fire break. It's a fire break. It preserves the rest of the assets. Almonds, we have owl boxes. We've got 1,200 owl boxes on some of our almond productions in California. Again, why? It's again on a financial statement, it comes across as an OPEX and then or as a CAPEX. It's a real pain, but actually on a natural capital account, it's seen as a reduction of pesticide, a huge rodent control benefit, and a huge food safety benefit, right? Because the almonds they're not mechanically harvested, they fall to the ground. So having 1,100 owl boxes is a tremendous integrated pest management system. So these are some of the examples, and I'll pause there and hand over to Volkert for your lots of examples.
Thank you, Christina. But first of all, I would like to echo Pavan's admiration for women. And not just in India, but also right here under our nose in Rome, where you have the entire TCA accelerator team preparing all this and uniting us in coalitions of the willing. So a big compliment for that. And it also reminds me of the good old Obama times, where Michelle and Barack were having dinner in a very posh organic restaurant in downtown New York. And at some point during dinner, Michelle says, darling, I have to confess something to you. The owner of this restaurant is a former boyfriend. And so Barack says, generous as he always is, darling, that's no problem. I mean, you would have been, if you would have married him, you would have been the wife of a very, very famous downtown New York restaurant owner. And she says, honey, it doesn't work that way. If I would have married him, he would have been president of the United States. So having said that, as a humble male entrepreneur, simple, that's a disclaimer at the same time. I would like to share a few examples of what we're doing in a coalition of the willing. We believe in dream, dance, deliver, or fake, freeze, and fail. There's other F's as well, but you start dreaming big. And I think what we're doing here is dreaming big because we need bigger frameworks to address the externalities, don't we? We need fiscal incentives to create a more level playing field where the polluter no longer gets away with a competitive advantage. We need to reward growers for their ecosystem services. Yes, we need these dreams, and we need coalitions of the willing who dance in an orchestra where each and every voice counts, because there's no silver bullet to solve this. But we also need to deliver concrete examples of prototypes and pilots. And that's, I think, where our coalition comes in. A coalition of 90 SME food companies, ranging in turnover from 500 million to 1 billion, with a few exceptions such as Ahold, the big Dutch retailer, who have decided to navigate change and innovation on the basis of 4 M's: measure impact, manage impact, monetize impact, and market impact. And I would like to zoom into that 4th M a little bit, because if we do not start rewarding growers or land stewards for their ecosystem services, we keep mopping the floor with the tap open. So we can have enormous amounts of scientific discussions about frameworks and what metrics we need, and we need these discussions as part of the voices in the orchestra, change orchestra. But we also need concrete examples with incomplete frameworks, with incomplete insights, and just go along and develop vision in action. So we are currently talking to the 2 companies outside beyond the value chain, the food supply chain. For instance, companies who have to offset something, or water companies who believe that preventing is cheaper than curing water pollution, for instance. And particularly in Holland, I mean, everybody's talking about a huge nitrogen crisis, and we do have one, but the water crisis is probably even bigger, which is weird to believe in a water country like Holland, but that's the case. And it's not just pollution, it's also droughts and flood risks and litigation and lawsuits, farmers suing water companies for not delivering water in the right time. So this is accumulating costs for the water companies and the water catchment areas, whereas they say, okay, how about if we talk to farmers in our water catchment area and reward them for their ecosystem services that deliver clean groundwater, clean and de-risk floods and droughts. And the way we do this is that we explore how we can design contracts, ecosystem service contracts between water companies, in this example, and farmers, who would then agree on an outcome-based or management practice-based ecosystem service of these farmers. And this contract then, not to be confused with investments in nature or in land, which belongs to the commons, which you can't own and shouldn't own, which is what the BlackRocks and Vanguards are doing increasingly, not to confuse with that. We are embarking on a journey where we reward growers by agreeing on ecosystem service contracts, service contracts. And because you prevent costs in future, that's where the future economic value is. You can separate that contract from other assets on your balance sheet, and you have verifiable and identifiable outcomes. So you meet 3 important accountancy criteria to assetize this contract on your balance sheet and potentially trade that asset, new asset class, basically. This is just one example for which we have created a pilot and a coalition of the willing with banks and nature conservancy organizations and farmers and accountants and particularly also companies, food companies who are actually doing this already within their supply chain. So they're investing in de-risking their supply chain because they realize if they don't de-risk and future-proof their supply chain and invest in resilience, soil fertility resilience, water holding capacity, biodiversity, and sequestering carbon in deep soil, carbon dioxide in deep soil organic carbon. If they don't do that, then in a few years' time, the disruptions will explode. And that is a cost in itself. So that also justifies to invest within supply chains to put these investments, to consider them no longer as a cost that put pressure on your P&L, but actually to assetize this, which would potentially and actually in fact already attract beneficial financing conditions from banks. Apart from the PR story and the de-risking story and the CSRD reporting and disclosure frameworks, advantages, etc. So at some point, if you zoom out, you can we foresee a future where you can trade these nature restoration contracts, service contracts, or ecosystem service contracts in a pool as a new asset class. And this is all new and a lot of obstacles, but you know, Christina, where there's a will, there's a detour. Thank you.
Excellent. I mean, I suppose on our journey, we're at the measure, manage stage. We're definitely not at the monetize stage. And so it's what you're saying is music to my ears, because at the moment, we're delivering from our land stewardship perspective, delivering ecosystem service and are relying on the goodwill of our investors to tolerate it. We are not getting any other recognition from it. And I was chatting to a gentleman from Australia yesterday on a tangible example, New South Wales, where we're preserving land, which is a floodplain, where we could be planting cotton in a portion of it, but we're not because of its important ecosystem services to mitigate the flood risks and also to maintain the native vegetation, which it prevents, again, sediment control, which would then impact the neighboring communities, the neighboring landscape, if we were to remove it and if we were to plant cotton, and actually the neighboring gold mine would suffer too because the floodplain with that risk and so on. But at the moment, our investors tolerate that for the moment, as I said, but might not be for long. And they might say the opportunity cost is too big, you should be planting cotton instead. But we're not being rewarded by that holistic view. And so what you're saying is music to my ears, really. My challenge or my question would be, how does one make it happen? Because bilateral agreements take forever to organize. So how can one very practically put stuff into place? And where are you at on the pilot?
Well, it's not entirely fair because I was going to ask you a question, but okay. I think there's a certain sequence in these M's. So impact measurement and is a first important step, and we need to harmonize the frameworks. And GIST is doing a fantastic job, as is the global farm metrics job on a farm level. And at some point, we'll need to harmonize these frameworks. The second is how do you manage objectives and targets and engage stakeholders that may have a vested interest in delivering these nature-related advantages. And then monetization is important to know what money we're talking about. It is not just about the negative externalities, but it's also about the positive externalities. And then engage in a conversation with growers. I believe you're also in farming. So engage in a discussion, because growers usually say, how can I become green if my figures are red? Is that sort of simple language. So how can we unlock revenue streams for ecosystem services from within the supply chain and also from beyond the supply chain? And I think you have to zoom out and be creative. And what fascinates me is that you're actually already assetizing your practices on the balance sheet. That's what you mentioned, didn't you? Because you mentioned OPEX and CAPEX, and usually in the old-fashioned economy, it would be seen as a cost. But if you counterbalance that with an increase in natural capital. So can you elaborate a little bit on that, how you do this, in what form?
Yeah, no, certainly. So we have a financial statement, regular, and then we're building natural capital accounts for material properties. And we're striving there, and it's transparent. We have verified, it's audited, it's enough. Some of them are in the public domain, to identify where we have made a concerted decision, for example, like that area, taking it out of production, or restoration, where we needn't have done so, or where there's regenerative practices in place, water retention and so on, where it would not show up on a financial statement just because the limitations of financial accounting. And where, so we're striving to put that into a dollar value, avoided carbon cost, avoided taking a social cost of carbon, the role that might have on bettering air pollution or avoiding pesticide use and damage, sediment control, again, erosion control, maintaining the soil health, where it's not perfect. Of course, getting to a dollar value of these things is really difficult. But I think that unless you try, investors won't necessarily look at. It will always remain an anecdote. So we're trying to go from anecdote to metrics so as to allow investors to have some comparability, to see change, and to compare from one asset, one property against another. So whilst it's not great, it's putting things into a dollar value. It really isn't. It's not. It makes as a denominator, it makes it more easier to communicate, and it's full, laden with assumptions, of course. But that's what we're striving to do, and we've got much more to do in that journey. But we've published things about where we are.
So you're publishing, but you're not assetizing, you're not putting it on the balance sheet yet, right?
Well, it's putting into a balance, it's putting into a natural capital account. Yes, we're keeping it onto an account. We're not getting rewarded for it. But we're using it as a tool to communicate to investors around that long-term stewardship. What we would love is, of course, for where we're not directly farming, where we're farming with a partner, is for them to be recognized and rewarded for that in some shape or form, either at from a public good perspective, such as New South Wales government or something, or whatever, or the local government, or from the supply chain because of the resilience that the better soil health is enabling, or even in a community basis for saving lots of water and so on. How that happens, though, how that recognition takes place beyond just being pats on the head, I honestly don't know. I don't know, and that's something for this room to crack, really. But maybe you to crack, because you've got a pilot.
Yeah, well, it starts with natural capital accounting, but we need to descend into the DNA of the financial markets. So basically, we need to put a value in it and put it as a new asset on the balance sheet. And that requires quite a bit. And so what is it that you're actually assetizing? Because if you would asset it, and the first companies are doing it now within their supply chain, they are, for instance, paying €1.20 for a kilo of organic apples. And they make two contracts, one for the apple and 20 cents for the ecosystem services delivered by the farmer. So if they, usually this is seen as an OPEX with a burden on the P&L. But if you put it on the balance sheet, all of a sudden you could potentially keep paying 1.20 and selling at €1. Because, and whilst the corporate value is increasing. Now, that assumes that there's a future economic value, which you can describe, because it's cost prevention, de-risking your supply chain, securing future supply, etc.
And who's bought it so far?
And nobody has bought it.
No one's bought it.
No. This is an example of within the supply chain. When it comes to water companies, then, but I must admit that these food retailers are considering to also sell these assets to a beyond value chain investor. So I would like to invite Pavan. I think you have a view on this. And then after that, I would like to invite Sophie and Jelle from Rabobank. I'm sure they have views on this as well.
Firstly, Christina and Volker, thank you for a very enlightening and inspiring session between the two of you. So well done. Well done on oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for the anarchy. Yeah.
I'll wait for them to appear on stage.
Sorry. I'm supposed to take over here.
It's good.
Yeah. Please, Pavan.
So welcome to the other panelists, and thank you all for your many inspiring examples during this morning session. And I was going to appreciate Christina and Volker, especially for bringing up this issue of placing natural capital in mainstream. I think it's already begun. I think you're moving in the right direction. That 20 cents that you mentioned, Volker, the 20 cents that you mentioned, Volker, which would be capitalized, what's the harm is the counter argument I would give to accountants who would say that, but you know, it's not private. I'm saying yes, but if, so long as somebody is willing at some point to pick it up for a price of 20 cents, and you're transacting the $1 anyway, because that's the apples you sold in the market and so on. There are only two options. One is that it happens, in which case it goes off the balance sheet and becomes a revenue item, and then that results in P&L, or you depreciate it because that asset is worthless. But the reality is that today there's billions, if not trillions of dollars of inventories on people's balance sheets, which are not depreciated and will be shortly. And there are other billions and trillions which will be sold as goods and services. That's common practice. So what is different about this? Every owner of every asset places that on her balance sheet as an anticipation of this inventory or this work in progress being sold at some point. So that is within normal practice. There's a second dimension to this, I'll say, is that even if you don't wish to bring it onto the balance sheet, at least recognize it as a contingent asset in much the same way as IAS 37, International Accounting Standards 37, recommends that you should monetize and place and disclose as contingent liabilities and contingent assets, aspects which are today referred to as externalities. And my last observation is that you'll be the first moving this onto the balance sheet, but the P&L aspect of that has been recognized by none other than the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Norway, because they've subjected their entire equities portfolio of at least the equity side of the portfolio, which is 3/4 of their $1.7 trillion portfolio, to a natural capital analysis, and they have published it. So they have said that our 8,500 equities comprising 75% of our $1.7 trillion portfolio does have positive and mainly negative impacts. And here's what we've done over the last 8 years in building that knowledge into choices. And this is the result of that in terms of our return profile on the portfolio. And that's what business as usual would have generated, i.e. a much lower return, pointing now to the people of Norway and to international community that in fact, managing natural capital has increased the value of the fund. So I think there is fantastic precedent for you to move in the direction, Volkert and Christina, that you have mentioned.
Thank you. I think we're going to move into our audience Q&A. We have, I think, about 15 minutes. We're going to allow a little bit of adjustment of the schedule to take advantage of these wonderful speakers and their experience. So if you have a question, it's very handy. You don't have to run around with a mic looking for who has the microphone. You each have one at your desk, but please just raise your hand and then I'll call on you and you just press the button to have your mic activated. Oh, Lauren.
I have a question for Janet and Phum. You presented such compelling evidence for the kind of change that we want to see on the ground. And I'm curious how you're communicating this with your government colleagues. We're trying to make this link to policy. Janet, you talked about conventional agriculture still being the norm. I mean, we have talked in the past about seeing is believing. Can you tell us how you see a trajectory of bringing this into the mainstream when it's so clear what the benefits and value of your work is?
Okay,
Lady first,
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lauren, for the question. Indeed, the evidence is there. It can be seen. Sometimes, you hear questions like, oh, it's not documented, it's not written, so you have to write it and present and all that. But for Tanzania, we encourage and sometimes we do organize for the government people to come and visit and be on the ground and see, as you put it, seeing is believing. And actually, we try to do that. And about 5 years ago, we had the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture who visited the center. And one of the obstacles we presented that time was that we did not have a legal framework for agroecology in Tanzania. And already one of the take-home messages for him and the delegation that was accompanying him was to make sure that there is a legal framework established for agroecology for the country, since what they observed was so significant. And that's why we also encourage for other countries to keep practicing and keep these good experiences on the ground, because at some point people will see and will observe and want to amplify them and take them forward. SAT is a grassroots organization. We don't work at the policy level. We have other organizations who advocate and do that. So for us, we say we are happy to have the case, to show the case on the ground, and we can count on other organizations to help amplify that and continue to build the case for system change, for political change, and other aspects. But I will say, indeed, communication and communicating these experiences, this positive news, is not a big strength. Even for me to put this picture, actually, I was thinking a lot about what do I put for this presentation, and then I put this slide with the 3 pictures together just last month, just the month of March. While it's pictures that I have for many years, but it did not strike me that actually I can put this together and get to present, and that this is really, it's something to share out. So communicating is not the biggest strength. I liked also yesterday from Grace Communications, we need such agencies also to support the movement and organizations and initiatives, that they can be communicated and shared, so people out there can hear and utilize. We're doing very well at the grassroots with farmers as we are a movement, and yes, but we need this heard and shared on on the bigger space. So that's why I also appreciate the opportunity to share today, this morning on this stage, because I believe when we live here, people live with a message, and we can continue to work towards advancing food systems transformation and making more sustainable ways of farming the mainstream and the norm, because we all should be eating healthy, nutritious food while our environment is protected and well cared for. And that should be the normal and not otherwise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, in case of Thailand, when we start to conduct this study, so we actually cooperate with the government since we start, because we have the steering committee. The steering committee actually a lot of they come from different administrative that link to the sustainable agriculture practice. So we work with them, respond with their questions and their object. We try to set up this kind of thing together. And then after we get the result, and the result that we have is quite very clear in terms of the evidence that we need to change. The next step is we try to communicate further to the policymaker that, because in terms of the Thailand context, is each administrators kind of work independently from each other. If we want to make change, it needs to come from the policymakers who organize and set up some special committee to move this kind of policy forward. So for that case, we still not yet fully success, but still working on the government in that direction. Because we also get, maybe this going to be the challenge, one of the challenging thing from the government. So they saw the evidence from the study. They said like they're amazed. But the next question they ask us, how? How can we implement this to the farmer? That the questions the policymakers ask us back. So that's another point of the challenge that we need to identify. And just starting from last year, we start to implement some pilot project in some area. Try to show the government step by step. If we want the farmers to adopt this kind of new practice, what should we start? And then after they adopt, what should we do next? Should we create what we call the value chain or the ecosystem that help farmers and others in the value chains to join and work together to make sure that after farmer adopt, they won't switch back later. And to make sure that the benefit that we want it to happen, especially for the farmers, can be realized by the farmer, that we are working on right now, to show the government and try to tell them, okay, this is what we try to respond to their question. How can we implement it? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, wow. Okay, let's, I'll start with Hamid, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just two quick questions. One to Janet in Tanzania. I mean, you say that, a lot of subsidies, assistance is given to intensive farming, but at the same time, if you make a case of food waste, which is also quite a lot, and some amount of subsidies are obviously going there, and also it results in carbon emissions anyway. So maybe you can make a case with the finance ministries and say that, look, guys, this doesn't make sense. If we arrest the food waste, that will save you subsidies that can be repurposed to sustainable farming. So that's just a thought. On Wolcott, okay, you mentioned you have 90 companies. I mean, are they really sort of listed, or I would have thought that it would be SMEs, because if they were big companies, then sure, they would be scrutinized with international accounting standards. But if they were just SMEs and private companies, then perhaps what was said earlier may be relevant, that you could really monetize the future benefits, but you'll need to be very careful as to what are those future benefits and over what time periods, because unfortunately, international accounting standards has created a lot of money for accountants like us, Thank you.
Thank you for the making the point, and thank you for asking. There's a group around Paul Polman who launched the Food Alliance, the Food Coalition, I think it's called. And when he asked me to join that, I said, I don't believe in the big corporates. I mean, they come later and they can scale things, but we need first movers who are courageous enough to move forward on a smaller scale and to deliver proof of concept, after which it can be scaled. So you need companies that are small enough to move fast and forward, and big enough to be taken seriously. So then he came up with, well, that's not a food coalition, that's a Robin Food Coalition. That's where the name comes from.
Yeah, sorry, I had a small accident with my chair, but I think I'm good now. Thank you for the question or comment. I take it as a comment or as an advice to try and build a case and consult or have the Ministry of Finance, where, yes, they have all the money and all the budgets, and also they're the ones who allocate the resources for the subsidies. Yes, it's a great advice. I take it forward. And again, I'll share with my colleagues back in Tanzania on how we can leverage that opportunity to transfer the subsidies, instead of going to synthetic inputs, to go into more to help first with the problem of food waste reduction, and most importantly, to maybe go to better environmentally friendly practices, and maybe subsidize farmers who are in the transition and really doing ecosystem services, and be an incentive for them to continue to do the wonderful work of growing food and also protecting the environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Marta, and then Salman.
Thanks. I wanted to ask a question, since this is a panel about success stories, and I want to see how we can move across countries. So maybe I wanted to see if Bert can tell us a little bit of how it was using the sustainability, what is it, the global metric, right? What changes you had to do in Kentucky and to make it work. But I also wanted Christina and Volker to talk about the mechanisms that you highlighted. From what I saw, Nuveen Natural Capital seems to be US, Europe, and sort of, I'm not exactly sure, but considering the level of development in the mechanisms of valuing natural capital, I didn't know if these ecosystem services contracts, which seem to be only for the Netherlands, would they be like purchasing agreements, carbon purchasing agreements in your portfolio, Christina, or not? But I wanted to see if you guys can think a little bit of what works according to these regulations and sort of the context, right, across countries. Because it's really important for us for scaling TCA that we really think about how these experiences that you're having at your individual countries, can we scale them? Can we move them across borders, and especially with multilateral contexts like Europe or the US, Europe financial markets, right? Yeah. So if you could, the three of you, talk a little bit about that. What were the difficulties and what were the opportunities?
Thanks, Marta. And I guess I would just encourage, let's try to keep succinct so we have time for a couple more questions, hopefully, before we get to the end of our time.
I'll go first with the Kentucky specific example. We have a part-time researcher, scientist who worked on transitioning the tool that Sustainable Food Trust was using into something we could use in Kentucky. It took us about 1.5 years, and she was part-time. I have to say that we collaborated with so many specialists and researchers across the U.S., so really investing in the partnerships and the time it takes to pull in the expertise was pretty profoundly important. I think you run the risk of, we both need the uniformity, right, and the structure that can scale and cross country boundaries, but also for the tool to be effective, at least at the farm level, it has to have a place-based, locally granular data set that's underpinning it. And so, for example, in our biodiversity category, we have those keystone species for Kentucky and the US in there, and endangered species in that location for birds, for plants, for trees, you know, for those perennial species. So that's a challenge. It would have to be adapted to be very place-based in that regard if you're looking at that farm level impact. The challenges in doing that weren't much besides the time and the expertise, right? It's totally doable. And the collaboration that we've had with Sustainable Food Trust, we've been able to share back our learnings with them about best practices, and then that goes on to support the adaptation to other countries as well. So again, allowing those partnerships and the free flowing of best practices and learnings is really important and a significant part of moving the work forward at scale. And particularly, I'm thinking about when you talk about assetizing the ecosystem services, I mean, I think it's going to look different in different places, or what a government could support in some places, or what a bank would be willing to support in some places is going to be very different based on the policies of that time, right? So yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Very simply, I don't know how to really get scale. What I do know is very practical. We're all kind of believers in this room anyway on TCA and the importance of multi-capital kind of thinking. But my kind of a plea or advice is just to really drive that in one's corporation or in one's whatever setting one in, because putting it on paper, putting it in a structured format or a report, particularly that one discloses, which invites debate and so on and so forth, it's not always perfect, is our best foot, because the more people that do that, the better in advancing this beyond financial accounting thinking. And it doesn't necessarily matter, I don't think at this point, what methodology, of course, it has to be audited and not made up assumptions, but one can use natural capital accounting, or one can use other TCA or LCA or TNFD or different routes, but that beyond financial metrics that one discloses and pushes out, along with all the warts and thorninesses and assumptions that go into it, is really important, really, really important, and not keep it closeted behind, because it is a movement that we need to, that we need to build. So very practical.
Volker, do you have anything to add?
Well, briefly, I would like to underline what Christina just said. We need to be pragmatic. And without the groundbreaking work of the Sustainable Food Trust and Adele and Patrick, etc., and the team, there would be nothing to harmonize. So before we can talk about harmonization of schemes, and the same applies to the groundbreaking work done by GIST. So before we can scale things, we need pioneers who actually deliver prototypes of impact disclosure frameworks. And then gradually, after a while, so it's all about timing as well. So gradually, maybe you have a CSRD context or another public framework, but that can only be improved in quality thanks to all the groundwork done by the GISTs and the Sustainable Farm Trusts in the world, food trusts in the world. So as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure that also applies to Christina, we can't wait for that. So if you talk to a water company, they will want different set of impact KPIs than an insurance company, health insurance company, who says, no, I'm not so much interested in water, but I'm particularly interested in health prevention. I mean, that's a clear point. The first and the third and sheet of Pavan's presentation, it's all about health, soil health, human health, nature health, and resilience. So insurance companies are increasingly looking at this, not only from a liability, but also from an assetization point of view. So if they wanted, so you don't bombard them with a hugely complete framework if they only want to know specifics. Now that has the danger of greenwashing at the same time. But again, Jen, I believe we need the whole bloody orchestra, and each voice counts.
100%. Okay, we have time for one quick last question, Salman, in the back of the room.
Hi, thanks everyone. When we started on TV Agri-Food, there were two very important words: framework, and we were taught by Pavan we had to use that in a very specific way, and externality. And I mentioned externality yesterday. What struck me about some of the presentations, and obviously I know Poon's presentation quite well, and indeed the Andhra Pradesh presentation, is we don't even have to rely on the valuation of social and environmental externalities to make the case for Andhra Pradesh or make the case in Thailand. If you just look at yields and yield reductions, yield variability, and average yields, it's just common sense. Now, this is actually really important, I think, in today's geopolitical environment. If we can make the case for these pro-nature interventions without having to rely even on social and environmental externalities, then that clearly makes our case a lot stronger. And as an economist, that just befuddles me, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. And the only thing I can think of is, we have information asymmetry, we have incomplete information, we have power dynamics, we have what economists call network externalities. All these things might keep us in this resource-intensive agricultural production system. However, we have case studies to celebrate that actually tell us that we ought to be shifting to pro-nature interventions because they're actually good for food security and livelihoods, even if we don't include health and environment. I never thought I'd be saying that 10 years ago when we started this.
Thanks, Salman. And I guess I'll allow Saskia to respond if you'd like. As everyone else has had a chance to contribute to the Q&A, you can respond directly to Salman or anything else you'd like to say in concluding.
Well, thank you. I think that was an important comment, but it's maybe not directly related to our case study since we were not so much focusing on different practices. But maybe I would just like to take the opportunity to mention a few points about the implementation, because I know this is a question that many people are interested in. What are we now going to do with our case study, and how will it be influencing maybe also policy? So I think there are a few points. One is it's an important communication tool, especially the monetization aspect makes the impacts very tangible for a broader society. So let's say it's just a lot easier to understand costs than tons of CO2 equivalents, for example. That's one point. So it can help us build a narrative for food system transformation that is maybe easier to understand than with other measures. And then also, yes, it will influence, or it can feed into the agricultural policy. I mentioned that this is currently being developed, the next draft, but it's an ongoing process, so I don't know yet how it will be taken up, but we did present the study to an advisory group that is where many stakeholders from the entire system, food system, are part of, and we hope that they will consider this as well in their work. But also maybe a critical comment on the healthy diets. I mean, we know that this is turned out to be the largest cost category, so one of the most important things to act on. And this is really just very difficult also for liberal societies. We don't want to tell people what to eat, and this is a point that always comes up very quickly when we start to talk about how to promote healthy diets. I do see that there is a scope for action that is not yet exploited, and I do believe we should do more in this area. We know that most consumer decisions are framed, and the frame can be aligned differently. But I just wanted to bring that up because I think that that's really an important part of the discussion, that it is difficult to find agreement on how to promote healthy diets.
Well, thank you to all of you. And I know there are so many interesting topics to dive into. And I also know that probably any of you in this room could come up here and be part of one of these dialogues in this discussion. So I want to encourage you, if you have resources to share with the rest of your colleagues who are here, we do have a link. There's a QR code at our registration table where you can upload any resources, links to websites about your projects and other information. It's a good way to share out the resources. So please do that. There was a link sent in your email that went around before the summit as well. But please just join me for now in thanking our 6 speakers here today, and congratulations on all of your great work. And now I'm going to turn back to Joanne.